Grace and peace, everybody. Just getting off of work, heading home. Behold, the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse of Calvinism. Reformed theology, lordship salvation, all muddled together in one basket, essentially. Calvinism, the tulip doctrine, tulip is an acronym, is crazy, and it has infiltrated the hearts and minds of many. It has infiltrated churches around this world, seminaries, everywhere you can think of that people gather together with a Bible. Calvinism has become the Trojan horse, and it's crazy. It is crazy. Christ did not die for a select few special people. Why are they special? Who knows? It's a mystery. He died for all people. His atonement was not limited to a special few. That is the L in tulip. And Calvinism, to me, is a direct assault on the mind of God, because any consistent Calvinist or Reformed theology person, if they're consistent, they hold to determinism, which is essentially the idea that man has no free choice. He doesn't have the freedom to choose, or he doesn't have free will. You got to say freedom to choose, because if you say free will, then they'll go into this long drawn out thing. But essentially, man doesn't have the freedom to choose on their own, basically, and that everything was predestined before the foundation of the world, including me blinking my eyes right now, like me raising my hand right now. I didn't choose to do that on my own. God predestined me to do that. And what does that mean? How crazy is that? Well, that means that God predestined. He pre-programmed me to make this video right now on how Calvinism is a Trojan horse, and how it's false. How it's false doctrine. Anytime you have a belief system or religion that looks to man for a certain amount of theology instead of the Bible, that's a red flag. I hear all the time Calvinists refer to the church fathers. Oh, the church fathers, the early church fathers. That's always weird to me. Like, I don't want to hear about church fathers unless you're talking about Paul, the Apostle Paul, or Peter, or Jesus Christ himself. Like, what other church fathers do you need other than the biblical apostles? Like, where the church started, right? Jesus Christ, the chief cornerstone. It's always weird when I hear people refer to the early church fathers. I don't want to hear about Spurgeon and Augustine and John Calvin and you name it. Look no further than the Bible. And in terms of men or church fathers, look no further than men that were literally inspired by God himself to write things down for us to read today. Stay away from man-made systematic theological systems that get inserted on top of the Bible. Labels are always crazy to me. Calvinism, Arminians. It's like, I'm just a Christian. I'm just a born-again believer who has trusted in the perfect finished work of Jesus Christ for salvation, his death, burial, and resurrection. Believing that is how I am saved right now and forever. Period. I'm just a Christian. I'm a born-again believer. Even the term free grace, I think, has been like muddied up. Yes, God's grace is free, and free grace is essentially free grace. When you identify as free grace, you're identifying with the fact that you believe in once saved, always saved, eternal security. But free grace, even that term, has its origin with the Grace Evangelical Society, Bob Wilkins, Zane Hodges, and there's things that I disagree with those fellas. So when I hear the term free grace, that's why I don't like say, oh yeah, I'm a free gracer or this and that, because just for me, and there's nothing wrong if you do that, maybe you don't know some of the history, but for me, when I hear it, I know some of the history. And like Bob Wilkin, for example, who is Grace Evangelical Society, we're talking about the origins of the term free grace or the free grace movement. And I don't know if he still holds to this, but he believed that outer darkness was not hell, and that it is a place that disobedient Christians go after they die. And this is way in eternity future. This is the outer darkness. They believe that outer darkness is essentially outside of New Jerusalem. And hey, yeah, you're saved by grace through faith alone. You're eternally secure. You're heaven bound. But if you weren't faithful as a believer on this earth, you won't be in the kingdom. You'll be in outer darkness outside of New Jerusalem, outside of the city, the kingdom. And that, my friends, is horrible theology. It's horrible teaching. And I was caught up in that some years ago. I was caught up in that. And it just creates a massive amount of condemnation, because you're like, oh, I'm saved from hell, but if I'm not doing enough good works, then maybe I won't make it into the kingdom. I'll be in outer darkness. It's essentially lordship it's works-based salvation with a twist, with like with a weird twist on eternal security. Anyways, labels, free grace, that I didn't even want to go into all that, but free grace, a little bit of the background of that. But labels and these extracurricular doctrines that are inserted on top of the Bible or placed on top of Scripture from man creates things like Calvinism, this Trojan horse of Reformed theology infiltrating the hearts and minds of many. It creates false gospels. It creates confusion. And Calvinism is dressed up so neatly and so subtle a lot of times. The pioneers of today of Calvinism, Reformed theology, lordship salvation, people like John MacArthur, Voddie Baucham, Jeff Durbin, James White, Paul Washer, they speak so well, pure orators for real. And it sounds good, it sounds intelligent, it sounds wise. They're going to take you to the Koine Greek. They're going to take you through scriptures through the lens of John Calvin. And that's the problem. they've leaned so heavy on man and man's theology that now you have this movement, this doctrine that I believe is a direct assault on God's true character. Because ultimately it does. I don't care what you say, it makes God the author of sin. Because a true consistent Calvinist believes that everything that happens, both good and evil, is ultimately orchestrated by God, predestined, predetermined by God himself. That includes the most wicked, disgusting, nasty thing you can think of. It blows my mind. It's so weird when I see people like Jeff Durbin out with signs in front of abortion clinics urging women to not get an abortion, while at the same time believing that every aborted baby was predestined by God himself to be aborted and slaughtered in the womb. Limited atonement, perseverance of the saints, or preservation of the saints. It's all backloaded works. You know, Calvinists will scream all day eternal security and once saved, always saved, eternal security. But if you're not doing X, Y, Z, if you're not doing this amount of work, so you're not walking the walk, then you aren't truly saved. A bunch of backloaded works, ultimately works-based salvation, fruit and specter extravaganza, constantly looking at a person's outward performance to judge if they're truly the elect or not. And they have to do that with themselves as well. There is no true eternal security in Calvinism, although they preach that, because they don't know if they're truly the elect until the end. Remember, you must persevere unto the end. Only the elect persevere unto the end. How do you know you're truly the elect or the chosen by God if the end isn't here yet? Maybe you're going to fall off. Maybe God predestined you to live a life of sin 5 years from now. Right? You just don't know that, do you? It's crazy. Calvinism, Reformed theology, lordship, salvation, all muddled together in a basket. A true Trojan horse. Today. Steer far away from it. If anybody out there is considering, even thinking about getting into Calvinism, maybe you've watched some of Young Don's recent videos, how he's a Calvinist now. He's a special Calvinist, though. He's a Calvinist demon slayer. I did a video on Young Don roughly 7 months ago, something like that, when he stopped believing in free grace, once saved, always saved. Biblical Christianity that looks at Christ's finished work as the only means of salvation. He left that roughly 7 months ago. I was on his Discord around that time. Literally have talked to the man on his Discord. Went back and forth with him on a few things. But I saw everything unfold, going from, I think he started out listening to John MacArthur. Then he was Free Grace. Then he was 119 Ministries, Hebrew Roots thing. He was watching those videos and getting all into that. Then he was pure works-based, keep the law, salvation, to not being that. And now he's a Calvinist demon slayer, which is very unique. Like a charismatic Christians have demons and the tulip doctrine is true. Super special. But I'm still praying for you, Don. I'm still praying for you, man. that you change your mind the right way. Anyways, maybe you've been listening to him because he's been having a few videos lately talking about Reformed theology and Calvinism and total depravity, and it's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. Do not get caught up into that. You're going to start thinking you're wise and that you just got it all figured out, and that, no, it's not the way. It's a Trojan horse. Burn that Trojan horse down, leave it by the wayside, and just stick to biblical Christianity, looking to the Bible and what it has to say, and not man. 1 Corinthians 15, verses 1 through 4, the good news, the gospel by which we are saved. Past tense, not being saved, the gospel by which we are saved. His precious blood shed on the cross, his burial and resurrection, the imputed righteousness of Christ, his perfect righteousness, we receive the moment we believe. That is good news. That is good news. The gospel. Read Romans 4, Romans 3, Romans 4, Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, John 6, John 5. Everything points to Christ in Scripture, period. You can't do the law. You can't do enough to save yourself. He paid it all. Stay away from man-made theology and doctrine and Trojan horses like Calvinism, Reformed theology. Lordship salvation. Stay away from front-loaded works, back-loaded works. It's by grace we're saved, through faith, not of ourselves. Grace and peace.